If you are interested in cutting your immature palm maintenance costs in half without sacrificing plant health, stay and listen to this. We are going to reveal the most interesting money-saving action steps right at the very end.
Welcome to this podcast episode brought to you by AGS Agriculture Global Solutions, your partner for better farming practices.
Yeah, we are really excited to get into the details on this one today.
Absolutely. So, as an agricultural field advisory team, we spend basically our entire day poring over the numbers, the field reports, and the actual science behind estate management. And today, we're going to focus on something that takes just a massive recurring bite out of your operating budget.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, we are talking about the immature phase of your palms, that critical window before they actually start producing.
Right, because you are pouring capital into these blocks and...
Exactly. And right after fertilization, your second biggest expense is weed control.
Yeah, keeping those palm circles clean. It feels like an endless uphill battle. It really does. But we actually have a brand new study published this year in 2026 that directly addresses how to win this battle, much more efficiently.
It is a highly relevant piece of research for anyone managing an estate. Now, to be completely transparent about the data, this study was actually conducted over in Riau, Indonesia.
Okay, right.
But we need to explicitly highlight why this is 100% relevant to you as a Malaysian smallholder.
Yeah, that's crucial.
The weed pressures they mapped out in Riau, specifically the heavy dominance of Paspalum conjugatum and Asastasia gangetica, well, those are the exact same aggressive species you are fighting in your own estates across Malaysia.
Right, because those weeds certainly do not respect international borders.
No, they don't.
Whether you are walking a block in Johor, Pahang, or Perak, they behave the exact same way, and the stakes here are incredibly high.
Absolutely.
The whole reason you are meticulously maintaining these blocks during the immature phase is to protect the young palms so that down the line, your future harvests hit the absolute maximum tons per hectare. If you lose control of the weeds now, you are literally sacrificing your future yield.
Yeah, because weeds are, they're far more than just a cosmetic issue. They are a direct biological threat to the physiological development of the palm.
Let's frame this using a scenario we can all understand. Think of weeds in the immature phase like uninvited guests who show up to a party.
Oh, I like this.
Right. And they just start eating all the expensive food you bought for your actual friends. Your young palms desperately need nutrients, light, and water to build their root systems and canopy. But these uninvited weed guests aren't just eating the food. Their aggressive root systems act like giant straws.
Yes.
Actively outcompeting the palm's smaller, immature roots and stealing those exact resources right out of the soil.
That is a really accurate visualization of the subterranean competition. And because they are stealing those nutrients, well, it fundamentally alters how you need to approach your agronomic inputs.
Right. And, by the way, since we are talking about nutrient theft, this is exactly why soil testing for acidity and nutrient content is essential.
Oh, absolutely critical.
And equally, leaf testing is critical when deciding on your fertilization inputs. You need precise data so you are applying exactly what the palm needs, rather than accidentally feeding a massive, expensive buffet to those uninvited weeds.
Nobody wants to do that.
Quick note. Tell us in the comments what oil palm topics you want next so we make episodes on what matters to you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are not subscribed yet, give this episode a like, and write a comment. This helps our YouTube channel so we continue transforming oil palm scientific articles into language that is easy to understand and digest.
So moving into the specifics of this new 2026 trial, the researchers wanted to rigorously compare the three most common control methods used in the field.
Okay.
They wanted to see which one actually delivers the best biological and financial results.
Right. What were the contenders?
The three contenders were, number one, manual weeding, which is just sending a labor crew out with machetes to slash the circles clean.
Very standard.
Number two, a systemic chemical mix using glyphosate combined with metsulfuron methyl. And number three, a contact and systemic chemical mix utilizing paraquat paired with metsulfuron methyl.
I am looking at those three tools, and, human psychology plays a massive role in which one a farmer chooses.
Oh, for sure.
Because when you send a crew out with machetes to do manual slashing, it looks incredible on day one.
It really does.
It is like the field just got a fresh, clean haircut, the circle is bare, the problem looks solved, and you feel really good about the labor wages you just paid. But I'm trying to picture what is actually happening under the soil. If the top is completely gone, shouldn't the plant just die?
You would think so. But that is exactly where the visual deception of manual weeding really trips people up.
Okay, how so?
When we strip away all the academic jargon from the study and look at the real-world timeline, a fascinating story emerges.
So,
In the first week after application, manual weeding and the paraquat mixture act incredibly fast. They immediately knock down the weeds.
right.
The visual satisfaction for the estate manager is instant.
Right, because the machete physically severs the top growth. And from what I understand, paraquat is a contact herbicide.
Yes, it is.
So think of a contact herbicide like a frontal assault on a fortress. You burn down the outer walls on contact, destroying the green tissue immediately.
Mm.
But the king is still completely safe down in the underground bunker.
That is a great analogy. You destroy the visible foliage, but the root system is totally untouched.
Wow.
Now contrast that with the glyphosate mix. In week 1, it is the absolute slowpoke.
Really?
Yeah, the weeds might just look a little yellow, maybe slightly wilted.
Right.
It actually takes up to 3 full weeks for the glyphosate mix to show maximum weed mortality.
3 weeks. I can easily imagine a farmer walking their blocks at week 2, seeing the weeds still standing in the glyphosate plots and thinking, well, I just wasted my money on that spray drum. It didn't work.
Exactly, which is precisely why this data is so important to internalize. Because while the manual and paraquat plots look phenomenal in week 1 by week 6 to 8, the entire narrative flips completely upside down.
What happens?
The study showed that the glyphosate mix drastically, and I mean drastically, suppresses regrowth. It keeps the circle clean long after the other methods have completely failed.
Oh, wow.
Meanwhile, the manual weeding plots see the absolute fastest return of aggressive weeds.
Wait, why is the manual plot bouncing back the fastest? What is the actual biological mechanism driving that?
Well, when you just cut a weed at the surface with a machete, you are leaving the entire root system and all the underground stolons perfectly intact.
Let's define stolons for a second, because that's a crucial concept here. Think of stolons like hidden, horizontal underground cables that the weed uses to spread.
Exactly.
They are just sitting beneath the soil surface, packed with energy, waiting to sprout new weeds the exact moment the sun hits the soil again.
Exactly right. In fact, for species like paspalum, slashing can almost act like pruning.
Yeah.
Actually stimulates them to push up new growth even faster.
Oh, so you're helping it.
Pretty much. They already have the established root network to draw on, so they don't have to start from scratch. They just deploy those underground cables.
So the slow action of the glyphosate isn't a failure. It is actually its superpower.
Yes. Think back to your fortress analogy. If contact herbicides are a frontal assault, systemic herbicides like glyphosate are a Trojan horse.
Right, right.
The instruction here is critical for any estate manager. Do not panic or feel you wasted your budget if a systemic spray takes a few weeks to show results.
Because it's working inside.
Exactly. That slow action is exactly what allows the active ingredient to be fully absorbed by the living leaves without immediately killing them. It then translocates, meaning it hitchhikes deep into the plant's vascular system alongside the sugars the plant produces.
Wow.
And it travels all the way down to the root tips. It poisons the bunker from the inside.
That's incredible.
It kills that unseen underground network of stolons, which is what actually prevents the fast regrowth.
This raises a very intuitive question, though, regarding the overall budget.
Okay.
Manual labor means we do not have to buy expensive chemical drums, we don't have to calibrate knapsack sprayers, and we don't have to purchase protective gear for the sprayers.
Sure.
On paper, at first glance, doesn't that make the manual method much cheaper overall?
If we were only looking at a single day's ledger, perhaps. But agriculture is about the compounding math of the annual cycle.
Right.
When we translate the study's economic data into a practical lesson for estate management, the manual method is actually the most expensive method annually.
Hey, because that underground root system survives the machete, it is not just a biological problem anymore. It becomes a massive compounding financial problem.
Yes, exactly.
Let's break down the math on this. Because the weeds grow back so aggressively, you are forced to pay for labor much more frequently. You might be paying a crew to slash the same circle 8 to 10 times a year. In the exact same time, it takes a single systemic spray to wear off after maybe 3 or 4 applications.
Exactly. The continuous labor costs compound rapidly. You also have to factor in the hidden costs of manual labor,
Like what?
like the time spent organizing the crews, the logistics of getting them into the blocks, and the inevitable delays when the Malaysian monsoon season washes out your slashing
You're
schedule.
right, which gives the weeds even more time to establish.
Precisely.
So how significant was the financial difference in the study once they tallied up the whole year?
The researchers found that utilizing the glyphosate and metsulfuron methyl mixture slashed the annual maintenance costs by roughly 40% compared to relying on manual slashing.
40%.
Yeah, 40%.
I mean, when you look at the operating budget of an entire estate, 40% is a massive amount of capital.
It really is.
That is money that could be reallocated to higher quality fertilizers, improving your drainage infrastructure, or simply increasing your overall profit margins.
It is a transformative savings.
Uh-huh.
And I do want to address a common, very valid concern regarding systemic chemicals near young plants.
Oh, phytotoxicity.
Yes, many smallholders worry about phytotoxicity, which is plant poisoning.
Right, because nobody wants to kill their palms.
Exactly. The researchers closely monitored the young palms in the study tracking leaf shape, color, and canopy growth patterns over time. The results were highly conclusive. None of the chemical methods caused any phytotoxicity to the main crop.
That is great news.
As long as the chemicals are mixed correctly, applied at the appropriate recommended dosage, and using proper spraying techniques with a shield to avoid drift onto the palm fronds, it is entirely safe for the immature palms.
That is incredibly reassuring. So we have clearly established that the glyphosate and metsulfuron methyl mix saves a staggering amount of money. It keeps the circles cleaner for much longer by destroying the underground cables, and it doesn't harm the young palms.
Right.
But let me stop you right here, because this is where I see a trap.
Okay.
If this specific chemical mixture is so fantastic, why shouldn't a farmer just make it their standard operating procedure and use it every single rotation forever?
I strongly advise against that, and the study's authors highlight this warning as well. You simply cannot use the same chemical formulation indefinitely.
Why not?
If you do, you are stepping right into the trap of creating resistant superweeds.
Wait, let me get this straight. You are saying that by doing a highly effective job of killing weeds, a farmer is accidentally breeding indestructible superweeds.
Essentially, yes.
That feels entirely counterintuitive. Is the chemical actively mutating the weeds into stronger versions of themselves?
No, it is not mutation. It is basic evolutionary pressure through natural selection. You see, no spray in the world kills 100% of every single weed perfectly every time.
Right.
In any given block, there might be one weed in 10,000 that just happens to have a slight natural genetic tolerance to glyphosate.
Ah, I see where this is going. So if you only ever spray glyphosate, you are essentially acting as a hitman for that one weeds competition.
Exactly.
You kill off all the normal weeds, leaving the genetically tolerant one with all the nutrients, sunlight, and water to itself.
Precisely. That one tolerant weed survives, thrives, and produces thousands of seeds. Fast forward a few generations, and suddenly your entire block is filled with weeds that simply do not care about your systemic spray.
Wow.
You will be spraying expensive chemicals on weeds that just drink it like water.
So what is the actionable strategy to future-proof the plantation and avoid this evolutionary trap?
You must implement a rotation strategy. You have to alternate your active ingredients over time.
Okay, so mix it up.
Right. You might use the glyphosate and metsulfuron methyl mix for a couple of rotations to get those heavy, established root systems under control and reset your baseline.
Mm-hmm.
But then you should periodically rotate in a contact herbicide or even integrate a targeted manual slashing round. By constantly changing the mechanism of control, you keep the weed populations completely off balance.
That makes sense.
It ensures they never have the opportunity to build up a dominant genetic tolerance to one specific chemical.
It is really about being strategic rather than robotic. You use the heavy hitter to reset the baseline and get your costs down, but you stay flexible.
Exactly.
It is about actively managing the biology of the estate, not just blindly following a calendar schedule year after year.
That is the hallmark of a successful estate manager, adapting to the conditions on the ground.
So what does this all mean for you tomorrow morning? We promised you the most interesting money-saving action steps, and here they are. First, tomorrow, take a walk through your immature blocks. Really look at the ground in those palm circles. Identify exactly what types of dominant weeds you are dealing with. Are they deep-rooted grasses or creeping broadleaves? Pull a few up and look at the root structures.
Yes. Second, evaluate your current maintenance ledger.
Yeah.
Look at your labor costs over the last 6 months.
Right.
If you are currently relying solely or even primarily on manual slashing with machetes, you need to start planning a transition.
Definitely.
Begin mapping out a systemic spray program specifically transitioning to something like the glyphosate and mesulfuron methyl combination we discussed today. By transitioning, you will significantly reduce your weeding frequency.
Which will drastically cut your labor costs and free up your operating budget.
Exactly.
And when you are making these transitions and navigating these complex agronomic decisions about your estate, you do not have to guess. This is where you can leverage cutting-edge technology. You can just register on CropDrive.ai.
Right.
The innovative artificial intelligence, AI, guides your fertilization and soil health step by step.
Yeah, and Palmyra answers your farming questions step by step. It is truly an incredible asset for the modern farmer.
It really is.
It was built by an international team specifically for Malaysian smallholders, making it entirely unique worldwide. And the best part from a budget perspective is that it costs just a tiny fraction of what a human consultant would charge to visit your estate.
So we highly encourage you to join the hundreds of Malaysian smallholders already using CropDrive to raise their income and cut costs.
Absolutely.
And remember earlier when we talked about the critical importance of soil and leaf lab results to ensure you aren't feeding the weeds?
Yeah.
Well, the AI can perfectly help interpret those specific lab results, ensuring your palms get exactly what they need to maximize those tons per hectare, while you keep the weeds completely under control.
It is all about working smarter, utilizing the best available science from 2026 and applying it practically to your blocks to build a more resilient and profitable estate.
Think back to those uninvited guests stealing the food at your party. Just because you can't immediately see them leaving the room on day one of a systemic spray doesn't mean the problem isn't being solved.
Right.
Sometimes the most effective permanent solutions take a little time to work beneath the surface. But it makes you wonder, if a simple weed can genetically adapt to outsmart our best chemistry in just a few generations, what does that mean for the future of farming?
It is a big question.
Will we eventually need artificial intelligence, AI, just to predict the evolutionary countermoves of a blade of grass before it even sprouts? The arms race in agriculture never really stops, does it?
Remember to visit our AI farming assistant at CropDrive.ai to learn more on how to increase your oil palm yields and incomes. Thanks for listening.